Welcome, everybody. I'm very excited to be here facilitating the panel today. In addition to being a partner at Osler, I'm also on the board of BC Tech, and it's been a great opportunity to get to know even more of our great companies here and the folks in the ecosystem. And as a sponsor of this particular award, we're always excited to see the growth companies in our community that are really on the precipice of taking the next step forward. So excited to be part of this discussion today with our panelists. I'm just going to start us off with a round of intros. So Erica, thanks for introducing the panelists, but I'm going to ask each of them to tell us a little bit more about themselves and about the company, just to give some context for the audience and to hear where you're at today with each company. So I'm going to start with Merrick. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about StandardFusion?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Merrick Pianowski. I'm the CEO and co-founder of StandardFusion. StandardFusion is a 40-person SaaS platform used by organizations of all shapes and sizes to manage their InfoSec risk and compliance programs. You can think of it as a system of record for everything related to risk and compliance. We originally released our first version back in 2017 and have grown our customer base to close to 200 now, including some very large Fortune 500s.
Thanks, Merrick. How long has the company been around for? Just since prior to 2017?
Yeah, 2017 was when we first put out the version. 2015 we started building it, but it was a slow growth back then.
Okay, super. Thank you very much, Merrick. I'm going to turn over to James. You're up next. Can you tell us about yourself and Oxygenate?
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Yes, so as Erica mentioned, Oxygenate's my third startup. The first was in hydrogen fuel cells. And interestingly, the second one started in hydrogen fuel cells, but we quickly pivoted and discovered this membrane we developed was good for energy recovery ventilation of buildings. So I joke, we started out as fuel cell engineers that kind of fell into the HVAC space. But yeah, Oxygenate, we're a clean energy technology company that develop and manufacture high performance ventilation systems for schools, offices, senior care facilities. So what we do is we supply 100% fresh outside air to buildings and do it in a low energy way and with no greenhouse gas emissions. And I'd say there's a couple unique things about what we do versus other kind of HVAC companies out there. The traditional approach has been these kind of big rooftop air handling units that recirculate building, kind of burn gas for heating, use chillers for cooling, where we've developed these compact systems that you spread throughout the building. So more of a kind of a floor by floor approach. So each floor or zone has their own dedicated ventilation system. And now you free up the roof space. So if you're the developer or the owner of the building, you can use that for your tenants to access nature during the day for lunches and breaks and things like that. We've partnered with the world's biggest air conditioning company, a company called Daikin, where we're integrating their heat pump technology. So there's a whole movement going on now around electrification of buildings, or some people call it decarbonization. So we can do heating and cooling through the ventilation systems with these heat pumps that we integrate. And lastly, coming from my own company, it's interesting, my previous company is a supplier to us. So we use these high performance membrane heat exchangers and low energy fans, so that you can double ventilation rates in a building beyond code and do that in a way that it only costs an extra like $10 per person per year. And now you can help prevent the spread of COVID. People are more productive because you got better cognitive function. So at Oxygenate, we say that we're all about kind of healthy people and healthy planet.
That's great. Thanks, James. One of my favorite quotes I was reading up in advance, and you said in an article, your first company was a roller coaster. Oxygenate is a rocket ship. I thought that was great. How long has the rocket ship been flying for?
So interesting enough, we started Oxygenate late 2019, right before the first COVID case hit Wuhan. And sometimes you're lucky and sometimes you're good and sometimes you're both. But clearly there's a lot more awareness around indoor air quality as a result of the pandemic, and us and our whole industry has really benefited from that.
Okay, great. Thanks, James. Okay, next we're going to turn over to Darius. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself and about FansUnite.
Yeah, absolutely. As Erica mentioned, I'm a CPA by trade, but I've been in and around the tech space for the better part of the last decade. I am the founder and president of FansUnite Entertainment. FansUnite's a publicly traded company on the TSX, and we focus on sports betting technology and customer acquisition for the sports betting and casino industry.
Great, Darius. And same question for you. How long have you been at it with FansUnite?
I've been there since the start. First iteration of FansUnite really started in 2014, and we took the company public in 2020.
Excellent. I'm sure we'll speak more about that particular part of it in the discussion today. Okay, thanks, Darius. And lastly, not least, of course, Praveen, if you could introduce yourself a little bit more and tell us about AOT as well.
Sure, thanks, Justin. I'm Praveen Ramachandran. I'm one of the co-founders and directors of AOT Technologies. We are headquartered in Victoria, BC. We have around 120 employees. We have been in the business of helping governments, enterprises, and startups in building their technology end to end. One of the main idea behind our services these days is like we have this open source low code platform that we developed over the years based on our experience working with BC government. And it has been very proven in accelerating digital transformation services for our clients. So for example, BC government, there are around 6 different ministries using our service or the low-code platform to offer digital services. And we have also helped a number of startups in BC to compete on a world stage, being a technology partner for them. And also we work with a number of private sector enterprises, providing open source low-code solutions and helping them accelerate building digital applications.
Great, thanks, Praveen. The same question for you. How long have you been at it with AOT?
Oh, we have been in business for almost 10 years now. We celebrated our 10th year anniversary last year. I've been from the beginning. Myself and George Philip, we are the founders of AOT.
Great. And Praveen, unlike the others, you folks are based in Victoria, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, we are headquartered in Victoria. We have more like a global presence. We have offices in Oregon and Portland, Oregon, and we have some presence in Vancouver. We recently opened our office in Calgary. We also have a team in India. So we are, we started in Victoria and growing internationally now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Praveen. So we'll get into the discussion today. One of the things about the categories for the TIAs is trying to get a better handle on, what these companies are doing and what they're achieving to be recognized in the community. And in particular, for those of our audience that are maybe earlier stage companies and thinking about how to grow to the place that you're at and thinking about benchmarks for performance, I'd be interested from hearing from each of you, what are some of the big achievements to date? So when you think about the successes that you've each had in your businesses, what would you identify as some as your biggest achievements? And Praveen, I'm going to come right back to you with this one to start.
Yeah, sure. So from an accomplishment standpoint, right, the key thing I want to mention is we have a great team of around 120 talented individuals. So we're very proud of that multicultural, diverse team with tremendous talent, right? I mean, that has been a key part of our success story. And so I just wanted to start there, like our employees, I mean, that's our biggest asset and biggest accomplishment. And then if you look at our overall accomplishments lately, we kind of transitioned ourselves from being a services company into more products and solutions, which was our dream from the day one. Initially, consulting services, right? I mean, it has been our bread and butter, but over the years, we learned from our several projects with the government and private sector, and we have this exciting open source framework called formsflow.ai. And that open source framework is getting us a place or getting us a spot in the table with big guys. Like, for example, we are having conversations with the multi-billion-dollar companies, and they're really excited about leveraging our open source product, and which we are really proud of. as I mentioned in my introductory statements, we have also helped a number of startups to compete on a global stage. We have been the technology partner in building their startup product end to end. So we work with several funded startups in helping them to compete on the global stage. Yeah, I think those are the more major accomplishments I can think of.
It's no small feat when you started with the employees. I know that your company's been recognized, your Great Place to Work awards, and you're proud of that. And obviously, that's a big part of your identity. That's not easy to do with a distributed work team across international locations as well. Has that been a challenge?
Yeah, with COVID, we definitely transformed ourselves, right? So we opened this fewer locations, additional locations, and we have a number of employees working internationally, remotely. And definitely like being recognized as a great place to work, that has been, it really helped us to attract talent, and we care about our employees. We make sure that they have opportunities to learn new things and contribute. And especially this open source framework that we developed recently, it actually helps attract a lot of new fresh talent to the organization. Because people love to, developers, they love to work on open source technologies, modern open source frameworks. So that has been really key in our growth, attracting fresh talent, and some of those awards like Great Place to Work. And also we got a digital transformation award for our product, FormsLaw.ai. That also helped us in growing the team.
That's great. Thanks, Praveen. Obviously, you need revenue to grow, but you also need a team to deliver products and services. So that's important. Merrick, maybe I'll ask you the same question. What would you identify as one or two of your biggest achievements?
So I've got a couple that really stick out. The first one was our first enterprise deal that we closed a couple of years ago. That was 6 figures. That was the moment when we realized we had something with potential. Until then, I think the imposter syndrome was running through myself and my partner's head, and having that signature and that large customer buy-in was really proving. The second was hitting 1 million in annual recurring last year. It was a huge cause of celebration for the entire team. Since then, we've actually been growing exponentially, and we're on track to hit 4 million by the end of this year. So we've got some pretty fast growth.
That's amazing. And did your first enterprise customer, did that really unlock the market for you when you're able to show those logos in a meaningful way?
It really did. It really did. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. What's your team growth been like, Merrick, from the StandardFusion side?
So pre-COVID, so it was January or March 2020, we were at about 10. We're at 40 now. So we've hired 30 people in the last year and a half, 2 years.
Excellent. Okay, thanks, Merrick. James, same question for you. Oxygenate, what would you say are some of your biggest achievements?
Yeah, Justin, I think it relates to your comment around the rocket ship, and just, even though I've been doing this a while, I'm amazed at just how quickly the growth has happened. So we're now 56 employees. 2.5 years ago, there were 3 of us. Revenue this year, growth over last year, 350%, 340 projects sold so far throughout North America. And again, I think we're kind of in the right space at the right time, and we've got this kind of unique product that not a lot of others are doing. I think the second thing for me is obviously to grow a business, you need money. And we were lucky very early on to close an equity financing with 2 amazing strategic investors. So one's one of the world's biggest HVAC companies based out of Europe. And then the second is Prop Tech Venture Capital Fund out of Toronto. And what's great about those guys is it's not kind of just about cutting the check. They really understand our industry. They're making introductions that are helping us out on the business development side. And I'd say lastly, what we're probably most proud of at Oxygenate is some of the stories we've heard from our customers on the impact our systems are having on whether it be their employees, or I'll give you one example here. We recently did a ventilation retrofit in a senior care facility in Burnaby, the George Derby, which houses seniors as well as war veterans. About 300 people have beds there. The previous ventilation system was old, antiquated. A lot of people got sick during COVID. After the retrofit, the executive director there, Ava Turner, was like, everyone now just talks about how physically better they feel and how the air quality they can tell it's that much better. And so just seeing the positive impact we're having on some of the people that were impacted the most by COVID. Another project we did locally here was a fitness facility, and I think most people know that most of the fitness facilities got shut down through COVID. So here you had these entrepreneurs with no revenue coming in, and we monitored one of the measurements for indoor air quality is carbon dioxide levels. And so we set up some CO2 sensors before we installed. During the morning, they're up around 1,600 parts per million, where acceptable levels are 1,100. And then after the installation, we're down at 600 parts per million when the gym was fully occupied. And again, the owner is like, now I can, with my staff, the trainers, as well as my customers, show them that, I've really taken steps to improve this and we can keep it open. And then the last area where we're doing a ton of work is in schools, K through 12, as well as universities. And just knowing that these kids are going back to school in a healthy environment. And, it's not just about viruses and COVID, but that you can actually learn better when CO2 levels are below kind of acceptable levels and helping with cognitive function. And I think, at the Oxygenate team, we're all kind of driven by this common mission of, helping people live better lives and kind of do it in a way that's not going to have a negative impact on the planet.
That's great. Yeah, I'm sure that from a recruiting standpoint, having a mission-based company does really help people to be committed and engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of companies I know have had challenges with recruiting, and I think we haven't had any problems. And I think part of it is a lot of people now post-COVID want to have a positive impact on the world. And it's definitely helped us on the recruiting side.
Just one quick question for you, James. You talked about raising capital from a VC and a strategic. For the audience members listening who are thinking about capital raising, it sounds like it's worked out well for you to have the strategic involved. Was that really focused on their ability to facilitate customer introductions or partner introductions, or what was different about the strategic than just having a financial investor?
Yeah, they're not doing too much in North America. I think their interest in us is they see us as a way to get into the North American ventilation market. They're one of the leaders when it comes to technology development, manufacturing processes. So we saw as a startup company that we could learn a lot from them. Daikin's really been the one that's getting us help on the channel side. This other company has been more helpful in terms of putting kind of the processes in place and helping on the technology side.
Okay, thanks, James. Okay, and I think last on this one is Darius. Can you talk a little bit about your achievements? I think you mentioned one of them in your intro, but I'll let you tell us what you identify as your biggest achievements.
Yeah, for sure. That was cool stuff, James. I think, our biggest achievement, probably kind of in line with this webinar, is really growth and how quickly we've been able to grow from a small Vancouver startup I think we were in a 90 square foot office for a year to a truly global brand with team and partners and licenses all around the world. So we've gone from a small team of about 5 people in 2019 doing about 10,000 in revenue to now having over 100 team members all around the world and on pace to do about 30 million this year in revenue. So I think that's kind of continuing to be our biggest achievement. And I keep telling the team that, I think we're still just getting started here.
It's fabulous. For your growth trajectory, this is a long conversation, but maybe very short version. So the going public element to it, what was the identified for you as the benefit as far as a growth opportunity?
Pardon me, can you repeat that question?
Just from from looking at a go public story, which is a little bit not unusual, but it's not the path that everybody trod. So what was in that opportunity that you thought would really support growth?
Yeah, for us is really access to capital, especially here in Canada. We saw an opportunity to raise money in the public markets, and we were struggling a little bit on the private side and staying private and getting VC funding. And we were fortunate enough to get some strategic investors to help us do an IPO. and on the CSE, and then just about a few months ago we graduated to the main board, the TSX.
Yeah, congrats. That's no small feat. I do recall a VC once saying that congratulating a company for raising money is like congratulating a chef for buying the ingredients. So I appreciate that the fundraising itself is not always the end goal, but it certainly is an integral part, I think, for many companies of being able to grow. So that's no small achievement. Okay, so we've talked about some of the successes, but I am certain that it's not all been easy. And my experience of the last 20 years tells me that most of the clients I work with have either pivots or challenges along the way. Not always, and sometimes you're lucky and good, as James said. But I think for the audience, particularly in today's macro environment, it would be good to talk a little bit about, a pivot moment or a challenge, whether it was COVID related or post-COVID related. I mean, we've seen the coming out of COVID challenge in a way that's impacted a lot of companies who benefited from COVID. So I'd be interested from each of you again to talk about one or two challenges or pivots that you think somebody starting out today at an earlier stage could learn from. And Darius, maybe I'll just come right back to you on this one.
Yeah, for sure. I think, like you said, fundraising is kind of like a full-time job. And I think early on for me, definitely was. And sometimes when you're fundraising so much, you can't focus as much on the business as you want. But in terms of kind of challenges, lots of them, over the years, there's definitely moments where I wasn't sure if we'd make it. And I think a lot of startups and tech ventures have probably, been face-to-face with that moment. So, for us, we were weeks, if not days away from not being able to continue business years ago. But of course, we never gave up. We continued to explore avenues for financings or acquisitions, and in the end, we were able to raise a very small financing to keep us going for a few months, and executed on that financing. And since then, in the last 18 months, we've been fortunate enough to raise about $40 million. And I think if you have a good product or a good offering, and as Praveen mentioned, maybe most importantly, a great team, there's always ways to kind of make it succeed. And sometimes you just have to think outside the box. Another quick challenge for us is we went public in March, or we were planning on going public in March 2020. We're a sports betting company, and every single sport shut down due to COVID at that time. So that was definitely a bit of a panic moment for us, but we quickly identified new areas of business for us in casino, in virtual sports, and we're able to kind of hang on through that shutdown for a few months there.
And have those avenues become core elements of your product now and your customer base?
Yeah, I would say it's might even have overtaken, to be honest. So that was a big pivot and a big shift, but all for the best, I think.
Yeah, the classic lemon lemonade circumstance.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. You mentioned Praveen's team. So Praveen, let's go to you here. What about for you, for AOT? What have the challenges been, or have there been any pivots in your past?
Yeah, 10 years back when we started the company, right, we had this vision of becoming a product and services company. But at the time, as a startup at the time, we didn't have access to capital. So we had to kind of do some consulting services, some subcontract work to start with in Victoria. So we created a platform, like a consulting company platform, where we can also invest in our own ideas. So starting with those smaller subcontracts, we partnered with the bigger companies in Canada, offering consulting services. We did a number of different projects for BC government. We learned a lot from those public sector projects. And when COVID came, so we had this in our back of our mind that we could possibly come up with a platform or a solution that could solve a typical digital service transformation project, or we can offer that as a solution so that governments can actually accelerate the digital transformations. So when I say that, just to clarify that part, so one of the patterns that we saw working with public sector is like there are a lot of agile teams trying to create software from scratch to kind of solve similar problems over and over again. So they always developers always love to code from scratch. But we saw an opportunity there to come up with an open source low code framework. For example, let's say somebody's requesting freedom of information request. requesting freedom of information or applying for a business license or a cutting permit, right? They are dealing with another party on the other side and requesting a service. There needs to be approval workflows, there needs to be analytics, there needs to be integrated identity management. So there's a lot of common patterns in all these, right? So when COVID started, we had a significant reliance on the government projects, and we saw a slowdown in our services revenue. So we saw it as an opportunity. So we had a number of people available who were on bench and not working on any of our projects. So we leveraged that opportunity to create an open source low-code platform to deal with these challenges or like scenarios I mentioned earlier, right? So we invested in our people, we created this framework, and that actually brought us back into the game. So early on COVID, we had that challenge, and then we were able to pivot into our open source low-code framework that brought us back into the game, and we were able to accelerate our growth again. And in fact, in the span of 3 years, right, we were able to double the size. So pre-COVID, we were around 60 plus people. Now we are close to 125, right? So we managed to double our size in those 3 years. So we saw it as an opportunity to invest in our product, and it really paid off.
It's interesting, and you don't have to ask this question, but it sounds like you did that without raising external capital.
Fortunately, we were still in a reasonably good financial position, right? Because we started the business 10 years ago. So when COVID happened, we were in business for almost 8 years. So we definitely had some internal capital set aside to work on such passion projects. So this was like one of the. So we did it as a passion project, and we were able to do it without raising money.
That's great, and you could have a whole separate session on how to transition from a service company to a product company and how to raise capital if you're trying to do that. Because I've worked with many clients who've struggled with trying to figure out the right balance and mix. So congrats to you for making some of that transition. It's impressive. Maybe we'll go back to Merrick to answer the same question. So a pivot or a challenge for you. I know you said you had the imposter syndrome that I think many startup founders have. Were there pivots or challenges? Were you really worried about it?
So I'm going to echo everyone else and mention COVID and the pandemic. It was a scary time. We're a bootstrap company. We didn't have investors to pull money from. There were so many uncertainties when COVID hit, and deals that were ready to close just got put on hold for months. What we decided to do was take that as an opportunity and focus on building out our sales and marketing processes, which by the end of the year really started paying off. So we ended up with a well-oiled sales and marketing engine that was able to predictably bring in leads, and the sales team that was able to support closing those deals. So really learned the importance of having documented and sales and marketing processes in place to support growth.
Interesting. So sort of slowing down to speed up in a sense, right? Just to make sure you figure out the process. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So COVID sounds like a theme across all the companies. James, you've already touched on this a little bit, but I think for you, the COVID was more of an opportunity than a challenge or a pivot. But if you haven't in your young company had to have a challenge or a pivot, I know you've done this several times, and it sounds like the roller coaster implies that there was challenges and pivots in the past. So what would you share with our audience in terms of the types of things you've gone through?
Yeah, right now we're probably facing our biggest challenge at Oxygenate, and that's finding a new, larger manufacturing facility. We want to stay in British Columbia. We currently have an 8,500 square foot facility that we've outgrown. We're running 2 shifts right now and just kind of trying to keep up. I don't know if people know, but there's less than like 0.4% availability of industrial space in the Lower Mainland. Lease rates have gone up 30% in the last year. We're working with Cushman, who are doing a great job, but it's gotten so desperate. I'm like riding my e-bike around Burnaby, like looking for signs for buildings to try to find space right now. But one thing I did recently, I kind of love it. A favorite part of my job is kind of cold calling and business development, and it's a kind of a bit of a game. But I reached out on LinkedIn to one of the city councilors who I knew was sustainably minded, and I asked her if by chance the city had any kind of space that they could lease to us. So she reached out to the head of real estate, who got back that they had a 53,000 square foot movie studio that the tenant just moved out of. So we're currently negotiating that. So fingers crossed that we can kind of sign that lease and, continue to, grow these kind of green jobs and knowledge-based jobs. But I think the big learning for me kind of as an entrepreneur, and I think throughout my career, is kind of just be persistent, don't give up. And some people say, hey, you kind of got lucky, but you really got to make your own luck to happen, and so just kind of pick up the phone, and you got to kiss a lot of frogs before you meet the princess. And so that will hopefully get us through that, but we need something within the next couple months because it's not tenable.
So growth stage companies still face problems and challenges. Sometimes they just get bigger the bigger the company is, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, a quick sidebar, we opened our office in 2015 with 3 people here in Vancouver. And when COVID hit, like all of you, there was a lot of concern over what the world was going to look like and what to do with team. And we doubled down and expanded, and we're 75 people now. So we've kind of gone through a similar trajectory to you guys in our own office here. Yeah, obviously it's a service business, but I understand some of the challenges and the ways to turn those into opportunities and doubling down and thinking about how to use the extra capacity. Okay, so on a different theme and just watching the clock here, maybe I'll get you to each identify one thing for me here. So the theme of the TIAs this year is ambition. So if you had to summarize it in one sentence for each of you, what are your ambitions for the future, given where you are at today and what you're being recognized for? James, I'll start with you, and you're not allowed to say a new facility. So other than that, what ambitions do you have for the future for Oxygenate?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I said earlier, just about making kind of a positive impact on the health of people on the planet. And I've been a big believer, if you focus on growing revenue or margins or acquisitions, it's not going to happen. But if you focus on what's important, which, to Praveen's point, hiring the right people, being responsive to your customers, developing kind of innovative technology or product or service, and kind of having fun along the way, that those other kind of ambitions will happen. So I think that's what we're focused on, is just kind of having a purpose and focusing on the fundamentals.
Okay, thanks, James. Darius?
Yeah, candidly, I think our goals and ambitions are huge, which I think is a good thing. Our main 2 offerings at FansUnite are technology and customer acquisition for gaming operators. Right now, the Canadian, US, and probably South American market are huge, but they're still in their infancy. Using baseball terms, we still say they're in their first inning. So there's a huge potential for growth. And I'd say our number one ambition is seeing FansUnite's technology as being a major player in those markets.
Okay, thanks, Darius. Praveen?
So we are very ambitious about being a global leader in open source low code development. We want to democratize this enterprise application development, like that happens in enterprises, right? So when it comes to enterprise application development, usually you need a number of programmers. Non-program people have very less to contribute, but we want to continue working on our open source low code solution and democratize it so that even non-programmers, right, you use drag and drop features, they can create applications very quickly. Traditionally, open source solutions were not low code. You still need developers for open source solutions. But with our open source low code platform, we see an opportunity to be a leader in that space, to democratize that so that people can drag and drop and create enterprise applications.
Great, thanks, Praveen. I think lastly on this one is Merrick, what are your ambitions for your business?
So we've been growing an average of 200% year over year last few years, and we just want to continue that trajectory, become one of the top 5 enterprise GRC platforms out there, and we see that happening in the next few years.
Okay. That's great. I have one more question for each of you. So I think, James, you kind of answered this one already for yourself, but maybe for the others, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting to grow their business? Obviously, it's not typically just a linear journey up and to the right. So is there any really poignant advice you'd start with for somebody who's starting to get at least to where you are today? Merrick, what piece of advice would you pass on?
Sorry, was it me or James?
Yeah, no, you. Sorry. Start with you.
Yeah, surround yourself with smart people, people who support you and want to see you succeed. You'll get lots of advice, but make sure you trust your gut, because there's no single path to success. You could raise VC, you could go PE, you can be bootstrap. Vancouver's got a large ecosystem of really smart, rich tech founders. They've gone through the same struggles that you have, or you will. Reach out to them. Chances are they'll happily help you, myself included.
Yeah, that's great advice. And one of the things that people, I mean, even just calling into this and listening to you folks, if they're engaging with BC Tech and engaging with the community, 100% agree with you, Merrick. There's lots of people willing to help. Praveen, what would you say is a piece of advice for somebody just starting?
I have two items to say. One is you need to find your soul, right? You need to find that differentiator for your product or service. Keep working on that. Don't go too broad. Narrow it down. Like identify that key differentiator for your product or service. Second thing is like some of the entrepreneurs out there, right? I mean, they come from a tech background, so you could be the best developer in the world. You would be the like real techie guy out there, but you need help when it comes to sales and marketing, right? I mean, that's the mistake we had, right? We did not really focus on sales and marketing, being tech entrepreneurs. Down the line, we got help on marketing and sales side, and we believe it's paying off, and it's going to pay off big time in the coming years.
Yeah, that's very good advice, and it's similar, Merrick, to what you said in terms of taking the time to figure out your sales channel and your processes, and knowing your own limitations, I guess, for me, right? Darius, what about you? What advice would you give somebody?
Yeah, I got a couple as well, and probably just copying what Merrick just said. I know I wouldn't be where I'm at today without the help of others, so I can attribute a lot of that to the BC Tech community. So just surround yourself with good people and people who will actually be candid and honest and give you feedback, right? Because sometimes when you're in the trenches, you don't get that bird's eye view. Second thing, maybe a little bit outside the box, but I'd also urge kind of founders to focus on their mental health, right? Starting and growing a business is a grind, and obviously there's a lot of wins, but there's a lot of challenges and setbacks and obstacles. And I think mental health is something that not enough C-level and executives are talking about. And I think that's probably a disservice to all of us. So, make sure your mental health is getting the appropriate attention, and that way you can be the best version of yourself and help your company and hopefully help your team as well.
Yeah, very topical and good advice, Darius. Thank you for that. James, I said you answered it partially because your answer about your ambitions was a lot about advice on what to focus on. So maybe I'll let you try, repeat it or give us a different answer. But what would you say would be advice to an early stage company?
Yeah, I just want to first comment on Darius. He's bang on mental health, and I would say physical health as well is kind of tied to that. I know one of my personal goals over the last year has been trying to get like at least 8.5 hours of deep sleep a night, because I'm just a completely different person the next morning, just way more kind of productive and just much more kind of clarity in my thought. But yeah, some other piece of advice. One, I think for me, just building relationships, long-standing, strong relationships with customers, suppliers, investors, advisors, because you can't do it alone. I think one of the reasons why we've been able to grow so quickly, our investors, they invested in my last company. Our sales channel partners were my sales channel partners before. And so, yeah, just go out, meet lots of people, and just continue to nurture those. And lastly, I think everybody on the panel has gone through this. There's going to be ups and downs, the roller coaster, Justin, I think you're talking about. So celebrate the wins. It's important to do those, but things are going to go sideways. There's no doubt in kind of what business you're in. So just be resilient, stay positive, Don't get stressed, and kind of leverage, the experience of your board, advisors, friends, your team to kind of get through it. And there's going to be kind of brighter days, and there's going to be the up on the roller coaster coming next. Just make sure you can get out of the lows. Yeah, so that's been important for me as I've gone through this entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, that's very good advice, James. And what I heard from a lot of the entrepreneurs I work with too is that in the COVID environment, although you can be hyper efficient working in an isolated, place at home through just using the use of technology, especially as the founder CEO, if you're not also getting engagement with real people in real life and in your team and your customers and your investors, and it does wear on you heavily. So I've heard that from many folks, and that it was particularly difficult during COVID. So hopefully these types of sessions, even the panels, are going to go back eventually to doing all this in person, so that you can also enjoy people and getting to know folks. So thanks for that, James. So I think that's the end of the formal questions that we had for the panel. Great conversation. We will open it up to audience Q&A if we have anybody who's interested in asking questions of our four speakers, in particular questions about what we've talked about today, and their own growth stories or any recommendations. I'd welcome questions from the audience.
I guess I could pose one to the panel. I know I've met with all of you as finalists for the TIAs. What will it mean? We're a couple weeks away from the TIAs. What would it mean to your teams if you end up being the winner that walks the stage and receives the award on October 6th? This is a bit self-serving because I'm very excited about the upcoming TIAs. I'm sure you are as well. But maybe, Marek, what would it mean to your team?
I think it mean a lot. We've worked really hard to get to where we are now, and having that award just showing that all that work that we put in does mean something, and getting that recognition would be great.
Awesome. Praveen, I know you'll be there with your co-founder. What would it mean to the two of you?
For our team members, right, it would be a validation of they believe that they are making a true difference to people's lives. I mean, we do a number of public sector projects where we are providing end-to-end software services. We are using a low-code platform, so it's changing people's lives. We have touched lives of British Columbians through several public sector projects. So this would be a true recognition and validation of our effort there.
That's awesome. Darius?
Yeah, similar. I think we're just, humbled to be with the group, all other guys here in this chat. But, we've been fortunate enough to be nominated for some awards, but I think being able to be nominated and hopefully fortunate enough to win one where you were born and raised, right in your backyard, would definitely be special. And, we attribute a lot of our success, not just personally, but as a business to BC. And even though we're a global company, for us, it always still comes back to British Columbia. So definitely would be a special moment for our entire team.
Awesome. James?
Yeah, I think I'm the oldest one on the panel here. So I think I've been going to the TIAs for 20 years now, and just seeing kind of all the rock stars of the Vancouver and BC tech community. And so I think for me and the whole team, it would just be kind of an incredible honor. And I just think, kind of as a CEO, one of the easiest and most powerful things you can do for your team is recognition. And I just think that would be huge kind of for our team to be kind of part of that. And I think even just getting nominated here as a finalist is incredible for our team, but to win it would be even better.
Awesome. I'll pass it back to you, Justin.
Sure. Yeah, I was going to say, with the venue being back, as you know it, James, it's a great year to win for any of you, because you get to go up on the big stage in front of a huge group of people. So that would be exciting.
For James, how does it feel to support healthy life? What technologies do you use for inside buildings for clean air, and which are the best?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think it was mentioned at the beginning about what my wife and I did with our house. And when we originally built it, it was kind of all about energy efficiency. And I think, the big learning that we have, I guess, coming out of that and living in the house now for 3 years is just building an energy efficient house, having a healthy home also comes along with that. So we've got a system similar to Oxygenate, but actually different, where it's pumping 100% fresh air in. We've got MERV 13 filtration, lots of air changes. One of the big things I learned in COVID is how important relative humidity is. And when the air gets too dry inside buildings, that's what not only allows the transmission of these aerosols, but also the mucous membranes inside the body can't fight the virus as well. And it's not that hard to kind of do these things, both in existing buildings and new buildings. So we're hoping that, through this, more owners of buildings do the right thing and do these upgrades to improve the health of buildings. And bringing more outside air is number one, and better filtration, I'd say, is the second, and having humidity control would be the third.